"Oh, for heaven's sake, how can this possibly be transpiring?" David Wellington exclaimed into the receiver, his voice resonating through the opulent corridors on the 45th floor of Wellington Industries. The exceedingly wealthy chief executive officer paced agitatedly in his expansive office, his gaze fixed on the imposing windows. Outside, he observed the distinguished members of a Chinese delegation, disembarking from three sleek black automobiles positioned at the building's main entrance. The official interpreter had just conveyed their regretful inability to attend due to an unforeseen family crisis. In precisely 15 minutes, prominent executives from a leading Chinese technology conglomerate were scheduled to convene in the conference room to finalize a contract valued at $200 million. $200 million, an enormous sum, contingent entirely upon flawless communication. "Mr. Wellington, I've exhausted every avenue, contacting every interpreter in this city," stated Rebecca, his executive assistant, her phone still pressed firmly to her ear. "No one is available for a negotiation of this magnitude on such extremely short notice." David loosened his designer Italian tie, a sheen of perspiration forming on his brow. 20 years dedicated to cultivating Wellington Industries, and it all teetered on the brink of collapse due to a linguistic impediment. The Chinese delegation was renowned for their stringent communication protocols. They would undoubtedly find any reliance on translation applications or improvised gestures utterly unacceptable. Suddenly, a gentle, almost imperceptible voice emanated from the far corner of the room. "Excuse me, Mr. Wellington, but I am fluent in Mandarin." All heads swiveled towards Jasmine Parker, a 28-year-old woman who had momentarily suspended her cleaning duties to lend an ear to the unfolding drama. She held a dusting cloth in her hand, clad in the standard navy blue uniform of the building's maintenance staff. Jasmine had been attending to the executive floors for 3 years, always maintaining a low profile, consistently efficient, and largely unnoticed by the prominent figures who frequented those spaces. The subsequent silence was so profound that the subtle hum of the air conditioning became distinctly audible. Rebecca was the first to break the stillness, emitting a nervous chuckle. "Jasmine, this is hardly the time for levity. We are discussing a substantial international business transaction." David scrutinized Jasmine for a moment, as if encountering her for the very first time. "You speak Mandarin?" he inquired, his tone laced with evident skepticism and a discernible hint of desperation. "Mandarin, Cantonese, and a bit of Taiwanese," Jasmine replied with unwavering composure, meeting his gaze directly, without any sign of apprehension. "I pursued a degree in Oriental linguistics at Howard University prior to commencing my employment here." Jasmine, at 28, had never envisioned that 3 years spent meticulously cleaning these executive offices would equip her for such a pivotal moment. Yet, throughout her tenure, while polishing conference tables, she had absorbed every conversation, internalized every strategic discussion, and observed the conduct of every executive, particularly Rebecca. Rebecca's expression shifted rapidly from amusement to palpable irritation. "David, you cannot possibly be serious. A cleaning operative conducting the most critical meeting of the year?" However, David was undeniably desperate. There was something in Jasmine's bearing, a quiet assurance in her voice, that compelled him to pause. "Demonstrate it," he commanded abruptly. "Utter a few words in Mandarin." Jasmine took a deep, steadying breath and commenced speaking in flawless Mandarin, her impeccable pronunciation filling the room. David stood momentarily speechless. Though he comprehended not a single syllable, he could discern the natural fluency, the confident cadence, and the inherent authority in her delivery. "What precisely did you say?" he asked, still processing the auditory revelation. Jasmine translated, "It's a most respectful standard business greeting within Chinese culture." Rebecca crossed her arms, clearly discomfited by the trajectory of the conversation. "David, please consider the implications. What will the Chinese delegation perceive when they witness you have brought a cleaning staff member to an executive negotiation?" At that very instant, a memory, sharp as lightning, flashed through Jasmine's mind. 6 months prior, she had overheard Rebecca in the executive restroom, weeping on the phone, referencing a certain black girl who lingers around the important meetings. At the time, Jasmine had deliberately feigned ignorance, but every word had been indelibly etched into her memory. For a period that felt interminable, David observed Jasmine intently. There was an unmistakable depth of intelligence in her eyes, a quiet dignity that starkly contrasted with the customary dismissiveness she encountered daily. For 3 years, she had meticulously maintained these spaces, eavesdropped on countless conversations, and absorbed more about the company's intricate operations than many of its own executives. "You have precisely 20 minutes to prepare yourself," David declared finally, disregarding Rebecca's aghast expression. "Select attire befitting the occasion and join me in the conference room." As Jasmine hurried off to ready herself, Rebecca whispered furiously, "You have utterly lost your faculties. When this endeavor unravels, your professional standing will be irrevocably compromised." But David was no longer listening. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he was on the cusp of discovering that the most valuable individuals are often those who remain overlooked, right beneath our very noses. Unbeknownst to any of them, Jasmine had been meticulously preparing for this very moment far longer than anyone could have possibly conceived. And Rebecca, with her pronounced arrogance and thinly veiled prejudice, was about to learn that underestimating an individual based solely on superficial appearances constitutes the gravest error a person can commit. If you are finding enjoyment in this narrative of triumph over adversity and harbor a curiosity about how a humble cleaning operative can profoundly influence proceedings within a room full of esteemed executives, remember to subscribe to the channel to discover the unfolding events when talent seizes its opportune moment to shine. 20 minutes later, as Jasmine re-entered the conference chamber, an immediate and palpable awkwardness descended. She had exchanged her uniform for a simple yet elegant black ensemble, borrowed from the receptionist. Her hair was artfully arranged in a chignon, and she carried a notepad, projecting the demeanor of any other executive. "Good heavens," murmured Thomas, the chief financial officer, making no attempt to mask his astonishment. "Is that genuinely the same individual?" Rebecca made no effort to lower her voice as she confided in an assistant. "You can adorn a lump of coal with precious gems, but at its core, it remains coal." The Chinese delegation had arrived precisely on time. 5 impeccably attired executives awaited in the sophisticated glass-walled room, engaged in conversation amongst themselves in Mandarin as they admired the panoramic vistas of Manhattan. David initiated the formal introductions, deliberately omitting Jasmine's current job designation. "This is Jasmine Parker, our specialist in international relations for the Asian market," he stated, choosing his words with extreme care. The delegation's leader, Mr. Chun, greeted Jasmine with a gesture of profound respect. When she responded in perfect Mandarin, expressing her gratitude for the honor of their acquaintance and commending their punctuality, a virtue held in high esteem within Chinese culture, his eyes lit up with a genuine spark of surprise and approval. For the initial 15 minutes, Jasmine rendered every subtle implication with meticulous accuracy. She conveyed not merely the words, but also the underlying cultural nuances, the diplomatic undertones, and even the subtle witticisms that elicited genuine laughter from the Chinese representatives. The negotiation proceeded with an unexpected fluidity. It was at this juncture that Rebecca elected to interject. "Jasmine," she interjected with a thinly veiled, venomous smile, "perhaps we should apprise our guests of your rather distinctive career trajectory within the company." David cast a cautionary glance in her direction, but Rebecca persisted. "It is truly inspiring to witness an individual reinventing themselves in such a manner, ascending the corporate ladder, so to speak." The condescending undertone was unmistakably clear. Jasmine experienced a familiar wave of humiliation, a sensation she had known since the age of 18, when she was compelled to withdraw from Howard University during her junior year due to her diabetic mother's job loss, necessitating Jasmine's care and responsibility for accumulating medical expenses. "Life has a way of teaching us that opportunities can manifest in the most unexpected forms," Jasmine responded calmly, preserving her dignity as Mr. Chun observed the exchange with increasing bewilderment. But indeed, who could have possibly foreseen that an individual who was meticulously cleaning these very premises just 3 years ago would be seated at this table today? She paused, allowing the weight of her statement to resonate with the Chinese delegation. It truly exemplifies how our organization embraces diversity in all its manifestations. The ensuing silence was utterly devastating. Jasmine noted a subtle shift in Mr. Chun's expression, Not precisely disdain, but a palpable discomfort that tightened her stomach. Within Chinese society, professional hierarchies were accorded profound importance. David swiftly intervened. What Rebecca intended to convey is that we recognize and value talent regardless of its origin. However, the damage had already been inflicted. For the subsequent 15 minutes, Jasmine perceived a discernible alteration in the demeanor of the Chinese executives. Their politeness remained, their reliance on translation when necessary persisted, but the earlier ease had dissipated. She had become an object of curiosity rather than a respected professional. It was at this precise moment that a profound realization solidified within her. For 3 years, she had diligently cleaned these rooms while executives deliberated on strategies, finalized lucrative deals, and made decisions that impacted millions. She had absorbed every utterance, every tactical maneuver, every misstep they had committed, particularly Rebecca's errors. For instance, the occasion when Rebecca fabricated quarterly sales figures to impress a client, or when she claimed authorship of a project entirely conceived by a subordinate who was subsequently dismissed due to budgetary constraints, or when she leveraged confidential information for her personal business dealings. Jasmine had witnessed it all, heard it all, and, most critically, retained it all. The meeting concluded with a tentative, preliminary accord. The Chinese contingent pledged to thoroughly review the proposal, a diplomatic euphemism for, perhaps, if nothing more advantageous emerges. As the delegation departed, Rebecca could not suppress a smug satisfaction. "Well, that was certainly enlightening," she remarked, ostentatiously organizing her documents. "Perhaps in the future, we ought to be more transparent regarding the qualifications of our team from the outset." David's fury was evident, but before he could articulate a response, Jasmine calmly rose. "Rebecca," she stated, her voice soft, yet imbued with a newfound authority. "Mr. Chun mentioned something rather intriguing before his departure." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Oh, did he now? And what might that have been?" Jasmine continued. "He expressed his admiration for my linguistic proficiency, but conveyed a degree of confusion regarding the hierarchical dynamics of the meeting. He inquired if I might contact him at a later time to elucidate certain cultural aspects pertaining to our presentation." Rebecca's expression shifted imperceptibly. "Indeed? And what aspects precisely?" Jasmine elaborated. "Primarily, why the individual designated for translation was not introduced as the lead negotiator, considering that within their cultural framework, proficiency in the language automatically confers a position of authority." Jasmine offered a subtle smile. "He indicated a desire to gain a more comprehensive understanding of our organizational structure prior to reaching a definitive decision." Rebecca's face paled slightly as she absorbed the full implications of Jasmine's statement. For 3 years, Jasmine had existed in a state of near invisibility. However, she was about to discover that invisibility could very well be the most potent weapon of all, particularly when one has been observing, learning, and strategically preparing for the opportune moment to emerge from the shadows. What Rebecca remained unaware of was that every insult, every instance of humiliation, every deliberate act of sabotage had served only to fuel something far more formidable than simple resentment. It was in the process of forging a strategist, intimately aware of every weakness, every clandestine secret, and every falsehood that circulated within those hallowed halls of power. 2 hours following the evidently unsuccessful negotiation, Jasmine was once again attired in her familiar navy blue uniform, pushing her cleaning cart through the executive hallways. This time, however, every movement was deliberate and calculated. For 3 years, she had mentally cataloged every significant conversation, every whispered confidence, every document carelessly left unattended on desks, and most especially, those belonging to Rebecca. "Look who's back in her rightful place," Rebecca commented loudly, ensuring her words were audible to all executives in the vicinity as she engaged in conversation with Jennifer from accounting. "After that pathetic spectacle today, at least we know where everyone truly belongs." Jasmine continued her cleaning routine, her hands moving with an automatic efficiency, while her mind meticulously processed every syllable. Rebecca was blissfully ignorant of the fact that during those 3 years of tending to her office, Jasmine had glimpsed personal emails left open, overheard phone conversations pertaining to contract manipulation, and, most significantly, discovered documents that Rebecca had concealed within her bottom desk drawer. These documents provided irrefutable evidence of unfair competition tactics employed against smaller enterprises. "You know what truly perplexes me?" Rebecca continued, clearly relishing the attention. "David actually entertained the notion that a cleaning operative could salvage a $200 million deal, as if 3 years spent cleaning restrooms somehow qualified her to engage at the table with genuine executives." It was at that precise moment that Jasmine's phone vibrated discreetly. An incoming message from an unrecognized number, but composed of Chinese characters she immediately recognized. It originated from Mr. Chen. The message read, "Ms. Parker, I would be most interested in conversing with you privately regarding our company and potential future opportunities. Would it be convenient to meet tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning at the Mandarin Cafe on 42nd Street? I have a proposal that may be of significant interest to you." Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest. This transcended a mere translation engagement. It signified something far more profound. During the meeting, she had perceived that Mr. Chun was evaluating not only her linguistic fluency, but also her business acumen, her poise, and her unwavering dignity under considerable pressure. That evening, within the confines of her modest Brooklyn apartment, Jasmine opened a digital file she had diligently compiled over the preceding 2 years. It was not an act of paranoia, but rather one of meticulous preparation. Every corporation harbors its clandestine secrets, and 3 years of inconspicuous presence within the corridors of power had afforded her access to information that possessed the potential to destabilize entire foundations. The file, designated Wellington Industries Irregularities, contained 63 pages of meticulously gathered evidence, including printed emails that Rebecca believed she had successfully deleted, call logs precisely recorded by the security system during her weekend duties, and, most crucially, photographic reproductions of documents substantiating how Rebecca had systematically and deliberately sabotaged 3 contracts with companies owned by individuals of black descent within the past 18 months. Jasmine had witnessed Rebecca engage in deceitful practices with clients, claim credit for projects conceived and executed by others, and, most alarmingly, exploit her position to impede the career advancement of employees whom she deemed unsuitable for the company's perceived image. The following day, precisely at 10 o'clock, Jasmine arrived at the Mandarin Cafe, impeccably dressed in a simple yet sophisticated ensemble she had acquired with her initial college savings. Mr. Chun was already in attendance, accompanied by an elegant woman who introduced herself as Lisa Wong, the group's vice president of international development. "Miss Parker?" Mr. Chun began, initially in English, before seamlessly transitioning to Mandarin. "Yesterday I observed not only your linguistic proficiency, but also a quality of far greater value, your composure under undue duress." Lisa leaned forward. "Our organization is currently undertaking an expansion of its operational presence across North America. We require an individual who possesses a comprehensive understanding of both Chinese culture and the intricacies of American business dynamics, someone who has first-hand insight into the actual workings of business from an internal perspective, and someone," Mr. Chun added with a knowing smile, "who possesses the inherent dignity to refrain from deferring to individuals of lesser stature who occupy positions of prominence." For a span of 2 hours, Jasmine articulated her insights fluently, discussing market strategies, the cultural disparities inherent in negotiation, and, most notably, the common tendency of American corporations to underestimate the sophistication of Asian investors. She subtly alluded to certain irregularities she had observed within competitor organizations, without explicitly naming any entities. As Lisa slid a business card across the table, Jasmine's eyes registered its inscription, "Parker and Associates International Consulting." Beneath it, an annual salary figure that represented a 5-fold increase compared to her current earnings at Wellington Industries. "Please, give our offer your careful consideration," Mr. Chun stated, rising from his seat. "However, we have one specific stipulation. We would greatly appreciate your assistance in initiating an investigation into certain discrepancies we have identified within Wellington Industries contracts. It appears there is evidence suggesting questionable practices that contravene federal international trade regulations." Jasmine accepted the business card, her hands remarkably steady. For 3 years, she had been regarded as mere furniture. Now, two of Asia's most astute business minds were extending to her not merely an employment offer, but a strategic alliance. "There is an emergency board meeting scheduled at Wellington Industries tomorrow," Lisa remarked quietly. "We have been apprised that the Chinese delegation has lodged a formal complaint concerning contract irregularities. It may prove beneficial for you to attend." That evening, Jasmine initiated a telephone call to her mother. "Mom, do you recall how you always said that patience is a discerning woman's most potent asset?" she began. "Naturally, my dear," her mother replied. "Why do you ask?" Jasmine responded, "I believe I am finally beginning to grasp the full import of your wisdom." As she concluded the call, Jasmine gazed out her apartment window at the sprawling Manhattan skyline. Tomorrow, Rebecca and the entirety of Wellington Industries were poised to discover that 3 years of deliberate obscurity had forged something far more perilous than a disgruntled employee. It had meticulously crafted a strategist intimately familiar with every vulnerability, every calculated falsehood, and every hidden secret pertaining to that corporation. And in stark contrast to the executives who habitually underestimated individuals based on superficial appearances, Jasmine had internalized the profound lesson that true strength emanates from diligent observation, strategic planning, and decisive action, precisely at the juncture when one's adversaries least anticipate it. The subsequent morning, the executive boardroom at Wellington Industries thrummed with an palpable atmosphere of tension. David had convened an urgent assembly of the entire board, following the receipt of an official report from the Chinese delegation detailing grave contractual discrepancies that carried the potential for a federal inquiry. Rebecca made her entrance with an air of unwavering confidence, her vibrant crimson suit and stiletto heels echoing a declaration of authority through the expansive hallways. She had dedicated the preceding night to formulating her defense, utterly convinced that she could successfully attribute all blame to the incompetent cleaning operative whom David had inexplicably brought to the meeting. Well, Rebecca began addressing the 7 assembled board members. "I presume we are convened to dissect yesterday's debacle. As I had forewarned, entrusting an unqualified employee with the responsibilities of a negotiation of this magnitude was an imprudent decision that is now precipitating a financial repercussion for the company amounting to $200 million. It was at this precise moment that the boardroom door opened with an almost imperceptible whisper. Jasmine entered, attired in an impeccably tailored gray ensemble, not borrowed, but purchased the previous evening with the advance funds provided by the Chinese enterprise. She carried a leather briefcase and a laptop, her movements imbued with the assured confidence of someone who had finally discovered their rightful place. "My apologies for my tardiness," Jasmine stated calmly, taking a seat adjacent to David. "I was just finalizing some crucial information pertinent to this meeting." Rebecca's countenance contorted into a mask of barely concealed irritation. "With all due respect, David, I fail to comprehend her presence here. This is an executive-level consultation." "She is present," David responded with a frigid tone, "because the Chinese delegation specifically requested her attendance to address the accusations they have leveled." Jasmine opened her laptop with deliberate, measured movements. "Mr. Chun approached me yesterday afternoon with a number of specific concerns regarding Wellington Industries' contractual practices. Apparently, they have uncovered evidence of bid rigging and deliberate sabotage directed at competing enterprises." "That is preposterous," Rebecca exclaimed, her voice escalating by an octave. What conceivable evidence could a mere cleaning operative possibly possess concerning executive-level operations? The faint smile that graced Jasmine's lips was both gentle and devastating. "The kind of evidence one accumulates when one has remained invisible for 3 years, and individuals converse freely in your presence as if you were entirely non-existent." Rebecca's expression underwent a subtle transformation. The first flicker of genuine apprehension manifested in her eyes. Jasmine connected her laptop to the projector. The initial image that materialized was an internal electronic mail correspondence from Rebecca, dated 6 months prior, addressed to a client. This email, transmitted to the Mills Corporation, contains confidential proprietary information pertaining to the proposals submitted by the Johnson Company, who were, at that time, our direct competitor. The silence that descended upon the room was deafening. Rebecca attempted to interject, but Jasmine continued her exposé with unyielding resolve. This subsequent document illustrates how Rebecca deliberately inflated the projected costs of projects overseen by employees of Black and Latino heritage, thereby necessitating cancellations that she subsequently attributed to the perceived incompetence of those directly responsible. The projection screen displayed meticulously prepared spreadsheets exhibiting overt alterations, internal electronic mail exchanges, and recordings from the security surveillance system. For 3 years, Jasmine had assiduously maintained a comprehensive record of every single infraction. "This is a setup," Rebecca exclaimed, springing to her feet. "She's manufacturing baseless accusations to exact retribution because I uncovered her real standing within the organization." Jasmine maintained a composed demeanor, remaining seated. "Mr. David, the audio recording I'm about to present was captured by the company's internal security apparatus 8 months ago." Rebecca's voice reverberated through the room's speakers. "We absolutely cannot permit individuals of this caliber to believe they are suited for executive boardrooms. It's paramount to upholding the appropriate standards of conduct within the company." Rebecca's countenance instantly drained of color. She recalled that particular discussion, a private exchange with Thomas concerning the necessity of keeping the company free from unsuitable elements. "And this," Jasmine continued, initiating playback of a new recording, "originates from 2 weeks past, when Rebecca explicitly directed this receptionist to disregard applications from individuals whose names possessed an overtly ethnic sound. One of the directors, Mr. Johnson, a 60-year-old gentleman of African descent who had dedicated 15 years to the company, leaned forward, his expression grim. "Rebecca, is this account accurate?" That's taken out of context," Rebecca stammered, perspiration beginning to form small droplets on her forehead. "You fail to grasp the immense pressure I'm under to uphold company integrity." "Company standards," Jasmine interjected softly, "encompass ethics, integrity, and adherence to federal anti-discrimination legislation, all of which have been systematically disregarded over the preceding 18 months. David turned his gaze toward Rebecca, his expression unyielding. "You have precisely 30 seconds to articulate why you should not be terminated for cause and subsequently reported to the district attorney." Rebecca's eyes darted desperately around the table, searching for an ally, a sign of understanding. She found only expressions of disapproval and outright disgust. "You are making a grave error," she whispered, her voice cracking. "She's merely a bitter cleaning lady who—" David cut her off with unquestionable authority. "Is our new director of international relations, and you are dismissed." The ensuing silence was profound. Rebecca remained standing, swaying almost imperceptibly, processing the abrupt end to her 15-year tenure, which had concluded in mere minutes. "Your access privileges will be revoked without delay," David stated. "Security personnel will escort you to retrieve your personal effects." "And Rebecca," he paused. "Given the gravity of the evidence presented, we will be submitting all pertinent documentation to the federal attorney's office." As security officers escorted Rebecca from the premises, she cast one final venomous glance at Jasmine. "You may have achieved a victory today, but that doesn't alter your fundamental nature." Jasmine met her gaze with unwavering composure. "You are correct. I am precisely as I have always been, someone who observes, learns, and acts at the opportune juncture. The distinction now is that I am finally situated where I have always rightfully belonged." 3 hours later, as the meeting concluded with Jasmine's official appointment to her new role, David drew her aside. "How did you manage this remarkable feat? 3 years of accumulated evidence, meticulously compiled recordings, and irrefutable documents." Jasmine finally allowed herself a smile, the first in days. "When you are treated as if you are merely part of the furniture, people tend to forget that furniture possesses eyes and ears." Rebecca underestimated the potency of being overlooked, and overestimated the inherent value of her own hubris. At that moment, gazing out at her new office offering a panoramic view of Manhattan, Jasmine realized that the most fulfilling retribution wasn't about dismantling Rebecca, but about constructing something far grander than she could have ever conceived. The future that awaited her would be self-authored, and this time, no one could erase her indelible mark. 6 months later, Jasmine Parker occupied her new office on the 38th floor of Wellington Industries. meticulously reviewing contracts she had successfully negotiated with various Asian enterprises. Her expansive glass desk was adorned with documents presented in Mandarin, Cantonese, and English, representing negotiations that had already secured $400 million in new business for the company. Jasmine, Jennifer, now serving as her personal assistant, announced, "The South Korean delegation has arrived. They are exceptionally eager to meet the individual who has demonstrably tripled our business operations in Asia within a mere 6 months." Through the expansive office window, Jasmine could observe the city she had once surveyed solely from the humble perspective of an invisible cleaning lady. Now, as the Director of International Relations, she had ascended to the ranks of Manhattan's most esteemed executives. Her annual remuneration of $300,000 had facilitated her mother's access to the finest medical care for her diabetes, and she had successfully completed her master's degree through an executive program at Columbia University. "And what of the Forbes Summit scheduled for next week?" Jennifer inquired, consulting Jasmine's tightly packed itinerary. "Confirmed," Jasmine replied, subtly adjusting the sophisticated navy blue blazer she was wearing. "Not out of compulsion, but by deliberate choice. They wish to discuss my potential inclusion on the esteemed list of the nation's most influential young female executives." Across town, Rebecca resided in a modest apartment she had secured in Queens, having been compelled to vacate her Manhattan condominium. Stacks of medical bills for psychiatric therapy accumulated on her coffee table, interspersed with numerous letters of rejection from companies to which she had applied for employment. The federal inquiry into her discriminatory practices had culminated in a personal financial penalty of $50,000 and a 5-year prohibition from holding executive positions within corporations engaged in federal contracts. Her name had been prominently featured in every major business publication, cited as a textbook example of toxic leadership, rendering her virtually unemployable. That very morning, she had glimpsed Jasmine's photograph gracing the cover of Businessweek magazine, her confident smile juxtaposed with that of Chinese executives under the striking headline, "The Translator Who Revolutionized International Business." The stark irony struck her with the force of a physical blow. Back at Wellington Industries, David had convened a meeting with the entire board to formally announce the exceptional financial outcomes for the current semester. "Jasmine Parker not only salvaged our critical deal with the Chinese," he declared to the assembled room, "but she has also forged pathways into markets we never before conceived of penetrating." Mr. Johnson, the same African-American director who had borne witness to Rebecca's ignominious downfall, rose to deliver a brief, impactful speech. "In my 40 years of navigating the landscape of corporate America," he stated, "I have rarely encountered a transformation as profound and impactful as the one Jasmine has orchestrated within our company. She has unequivocally demonstrated that true talent transcends any consideration of race, social standing, and, most certainly, it does not reside behind a veil of prejudice." The assembled audience erupted in enthusiastic applause as Jasmine, seated modestly, recalled the woman who had once cleaned that very same boardroom a mere 7 months prior. That evening, within the elegantly renovated confines of her apartment on the Upper East Side, Jasmine received a heartfelt call from her mother. "My dear," her mother's voice was filled with warmth, "I saw your television interview today. You articulated your message about second chances and perseverance with such eloquence." "I learned from the absolute best," Jasmine responded, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "You always instilled in me the understanding that, while individuals may attempt to diminish us, they can never erode our knowledge or our inherent capabilities." During the televised interview, Jasmine had been posed a question regarding Rebecca and whether she harbored any lingering resentment for the harsh treatment she had endured. Her response was both precise and gracefully delivered. "Rebecca provided me with the most invaluable gift imaginable. She illuminated for me precisely the kind of person I absolutely did not wish to become. Her profound arrogance and ingrained prejudice served as a powerful lesson that genuine power is derived from uplifting others, not from trampling upon them." 3 weeks later, Jasmine found herself at Howard University, her esteemed alma mater, to formally announce the establishment of a scholarship program she had initiated for deserving students from low-income backgrounds who faced insurmountable financial obstacles to continuing their education. No individual should ever be compelled to make an agonizing choice between attending to their family's needs and diligently pursuing their aspirations, she declared to an audience of 500 deeply moved students. The Second Chance program, generously supported in part by my personal earnings, has already successfully approved 20 full scholarships for the upcoming academic semester. Rebecca, observing the proceedings online from her cramped apartment, abruptly shut down her computer, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time in many months, these were not tears of self-pity, but rather tears of what was beginning to feel like genuine remorse. Meanwhile, Jasmine returned to the very office building where, just 3 years earlier, she had navigated the corridors with a humble cleaning cart. Today, young executives greeted her with palpable respect. Secretaries sought her counsel on career development, and most significantly, she had become a dedicated mentor to 5 other employees within operational departments, individuals who possessed demonstrably untapped potential. "You know what I find most astonishing about this entire narrative?" David inquired of Jasmine during a private conversation. "You possessed all that incriminating information about Rebecca, enough to utterly destroy her professionally and personally. Yet, you consciously chose to expose only her professional misconduct." Jasmine offered a soft, knowing smile. The most potent form of retribution is never to annihilate someone. It is to construct something so undeniably extraordinary that it renders every attempt made against you utterly inconsequential. Jasmine Parker's remarkable journey unequivocally proved that genuine talent, unwavering dignity, and quiet, diligent preparation possess the power to surmount any form of prejudice or injustice. She masterfully transformed 3 years of enforced invisibility into the paramount advantage of her entire career. Her story vividly illustrates that often, the most influential individuals are precisely those whom you fail to notice, the ones who are quietly observing, learning, and meticulously preparing to shine. Rebecca's attempt to humiliate Jasmine, driven by prejudice and arrogance, ultimately became the very catalyst for her own self-destruction. Jasmine imparted a crucial lesson to the corporate world. True leadership emanates not from lofty titles or inherent privileges, but from the profound ability to perceive potential where others see only limitations. If this compelling narrative of overcoming adversity and achieving justice has resonated deeply with your heart, please consider subscribing to our channel for more inspirational stories that definitively prove that in the end, talent and dignity invariably find their rightful ascent, irrespective of the multitude of obstacles placed in their path.